Welcome to Tales of Hope, where every paw print counts. Animal tie in the house, spreading love, hear the sounds. Every week animal stories, rights and welfare in the mix. Step up, take action, we're giving animals a fix. Tales of Hope, raise your voice, make some noise. Change the game for every animal, girl and boy. One world, one fight, let's turn the page. A future for the voiceless, bring hope to center stage.
A very good morning, a good afternoon, and good evening to all our listeners, wherever you are in the world. Today, we have a very wonderful soul, Billie Groom, with us, who is a canine psychotherapist. And welcome to the show.
Thank
Billie.
you so much, Anil. I'm so happy to be here. I love your show. Thanks.
Thank you. You've pioneered canine cognitive behavioral therapy. For someone unfamiliar, what makes CCBT different from obedience training or behavior correction?
That's a really good question. The biggest difference is just how the purpose of them, the purpose and the principles and what they're intended to do. They follow the same guidelines as human therapy. So conditioning methods, people probably know as positive reinforcement. So you're encouraging a behavior, you're teaching a behavior, as well as instilling, good thought patterns with the dog world. That's called socialization, and humans too. Whereas cognitive behavioral therapy, it works more with emotions that are there and behaviors that are driven by emotions and cognition. So the goal isn't so much to teach and to train. It's to understand and to communicate and to provide guidance and directions so that the subject can decide for themselves that they don't need to panic or they don't need to. It's more of a journey, a guiding journey. But there is a set formula for both. They are both scientifically proven methods. Conditioning methods tend to be very good with puppies, just like with children. As we're, raising our children, they go through different stages and we adapt as we parent. So the standard ones tend to be very successful with puppies because that's exactly what we're doing. We're teaching them, we're training them. But as they get older, or if they come from different backgrounds, we want to be able to connect with them differently and work with them differently. And that's where cognitive behavioral therapy has a higher success rate.
Wonderful. Is it same with, I would say, because in India, we have a lot of, indies that are streets. We call them streeties. They have different names. So is it the same with the breeds as well as the non-breeds, or is it different, when it comes to breeds?
No, not at all. I've worked with all kinds of different, like you said, streeties from different countries and places and situations globally. And they are their own being and they have their own way and they have different experiences between themselves, but, and they have different experiences than, a dog that came from a ethical breeding situation, one from dog fighting or unethical breeding, or a pet store even. There's lots of different backgrounds that dogs can have. Many of them can have a positive background. The people started out doing all the right things and then, the people's life changed. It could be anything, and it's not breed related either at all. Although certain breeds have different character traits. But, they don't read the book. They are their own dog.
Absolutely. How does CCBT empower the dog instead of just fixing them? Can dogs really have agency like humans do?
Yes, I love this because this is really the foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy, where it's providing that autonomy so that they recognize that they're individual and that we understand what's important to them, and providing agency. The interesting thing about agency is that it essentially arguably requires the ability to make decisions as opposed to providing choice. So with other methods, conditioning, they can provide choice or options like which way to go on a walk, or, allow them to choose which toy they want to play with, or this kind of thing. But when you're dealing with truly, I would say, to truly treat animals as sentient beings, we need to recognize their cognitive skills and their emotions, and to provide that decision making. And this is tough for people to, like you said, can they really do that? They can when we use a method that's designed to do that. And that's the ticket. And it doesn't make the conditioning methods wrong or bad. They're just not designed to do that. They're designed to teach. Whereas CBT, we provide, we go through the steps and follow the formula, adapt it to dogs, but it's designed to allow people to reach a state, or dogs in their brain, where they realize they first make a decision, which is based on emotion. And then secondly, they have choices based on that decision.
Well,
So you can take something like a human example, and this is where agency comes in, to get back to your question. So someone could enter an area that they are uncomfortable, or see something that makes them nervous. The decision comes in on, am I going to be scared? Am I going to feel fear? Okay, we're not saying with CBT that you have to like everything, but how do you choose to self-regulate? And then based on that decision, I'm not going to panic. Now my choices are, I can leave, I can go over there and sit down, I can go talk to somebody, but I'm deciding to not panic. And that takes practice in the brain. And those are the exercises that CBT does, is practice the brain making different decisions. And dogs can absolutely do that. As you mentioned, streety dogs, they're doing that every day. That's why they're still alive, right? Dogs inherently, all animals make decisions. So once we start to recognize that, then they have agency.
Absolutely. This is such a beautiful explanation you've done,
Boy, it was long. I'm not a short answer kind of person.
No, absolutely. Please. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful that you're taking the time, to explain to us in detail. And I'm sure for the audience, it would be a wonderful part to listen and understand, because, what you just mentioned, it took me back, because I have 3 at home. Yeah, I have 3 at home, and 2 are rescued.
Right.
And I take care of another 6 in my mother's, where my mother resides. So I take care of those another 6 out there.
Thank you.
I'll be very honest, because that's what my pocket can afford. Sorry to say that, but that's the fact.
Yeah. Yes, I understand.
So I see every day, like what you said, is they making the choices and the decisions. There's so much to learn from them. I mean, to be honest, as a person, I've been evolving over the last 4 years. Now,
It is. It is interesting when we change our mindset from teaching them and dog training to learning from them, but also having those core skills and tools. So we're not, there is a foundation and a process with CBT, but it is grounded in learning, communicating, connecting, understanding, and also providing. And while all that is happening, we can also do things like what you've done, integrate them into your home and into your life, so that they can have a good life too. There is a process. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. And what you rightly said is, for us to, learn, there is so much to learn and understand from them. And if you start, I mean, for me and my wife, I mean, for my better half, both of us, we've been learning every day. So for us, every day there is a new experience that we have with all three, and plus for me the other six, it has been a really learning curve, in terms of trying to understand what ticks and what doesn't tick with them.
It is. Yes, I learned from dogs, so I understand that. Almost 4 decades ago, I started taking in rescued dogs, hundreds of rescue. I never intended to be a behaviorist. I just wanted to figure out why people find them so challenging. Those ones over 6 months. I should say, just to clarify again, that I throughout this, when I'm speaking, it is in reference to dogs over 6 months.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you say CCBT prevents euthanasia and surrender. Can you share a real case where this approach saved a dog's life and possibly a human too?
Well, there's thousands of these cases. Over the years, like I said, I started out with working with rescue dogs that I brought in. And then I started to work with clients, meaning people that have dogs. And so they rescued dogs and they need help. So statistically, 98% of these people had tried the other method, conditioning, and they found some success. But it was limited. And so perhaps they were, the dog had, it's a lot of aggression and anxiety, and again, behaviors that are stemming from emotion and perception. And when people feel like what they're doing isn't working, it's not necessarily that they're mad at the dog. Sometimes they're more mad at themselves, and they feel like they're failing the dog. And sometimes it's been suggested to them, even by their veterinarian or their trainer or whomever, that they should surrender or euthanize because there's nothing else that they can do. And that's, the industry itself being very, depending on where you are globally, but for the most part, it's restricted to conditioning methods as a mainstream. And so this is unfortunate, and they find me thanks to podcasts like yours. And we then switch the method. And when we switch the method, they start to see some success. And then they realize, I can do this, and I don't have to surrender or euthanize. And they see their dog, they have a different relationship with their dog, and they see it progress. And as soon as people start to feel like they're making a difference in the life of that dog, and they can see, progress, then they change their mind on, I can do this, and then they don't surrender and they don't euthanize. So that's a very common process that, with commonly about 100 to 150 clients per year. A lot of pro bono work, so I'll work with a lot of fosters, a lot of rescue organizations. But that is the goal that's how it started, actually, because I had a pet care business, and I noticed that a lot of people were quote unquote frustrated with that dog in the adolescent stage, so 6 months to 24 months. And I thought, why are they being surrendered and euthanized so much? So that didn't give you a specific example, but that is a common theme that has been prevalent in my journey.
What you rightly mentioned, when we as humans can make a little difference in the life of these dogs, let's just take dogs for the moment. Your life automatically changes, because for me, it's been for me as well. I said, as I was saying, the last pup that I rescued from my mother's residential complex where she stays, at times, yes, I feel that I wish I can do with the other two. This little kid gave birth to 5. 2 of them passed away on birth, and 3 survived. we were lucky to keep the 3 alive. And in the last 1.5 years, the kind of problems that we faced, people driving cars, doing all sort of nasty stuff. And for me, it has been, every time, whether it's late night or whatever it is, run to the hospitals, to these, these NGOs that run these hospitals. And the last one that we finally, this was just Christmas, last Christmas. I think about 7 or 8 days before Christmas, this little pup, somebody drove a car over her. Fortunately enough, it was not that bad. I took her to the, to the vet and everything. I did everything. But then she was still in the compound where my mother stays with the other kids. But she was all aloof, but the food and water was all there. And then me and my wife, we were into debate, should we get her home? Should we get her home or not? Because we already had 2 at our home. And my wife was like, let's get her home. And I think on 24th morning, we couldn't just, both of us, me and my wife, we were like, no more, just bring her home, whatever it is, we'll just manage it. And I tell you, it's been like, about 8-9 months. And this kid is like amazing, it's like, and it feels so good that, she's healthy, happy, running around the house. And the best part is she's also gelling very well with my other 2, the other 2 huge ones, because I have 2 Labradors as well. One is a rescue one. And they've all the 3 have gelled so well. And, but, the main point was, you feel so good if you can just, do a bit good for them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a different experience with every dog. It's a different journey, a different experience. And it's, it's like anything else that's a relationship.
Absolutely. Now, you've studied animal cognition, emotion, and psychology. What's the most surprising emotional truth you've discovered about dogs?
Nothing surprises me. Nothing surprises me. But I would say emotionally, well, I think what we just said, they're their own individuals. So I think I have this in my book. I talk about how, there's a lot of putting dogs into, they're like people. We do need to categorize when you're dealing with psychology to a certain extent. We do need to, have certain traits that represent, so that we can, for example, we might learn whether the behavior is stemming from a habit or cognitive dissonance or a learned behavior, and then that can help us. But they are their own individuals. So I would say that is just like we just said, that's just a constant, beautiful thing. But I would say nothing really surprises me, but one of the saddest things is that they remain loyal to an abusive owner. I find that sad. That's one of the saddest things. They are incredibly loyal, and it's sad to watch because they're confused. But then they're also funny. I find that they have humor. They have a sense of humor. They don't have it. This can probably be argued, but I find that they don't have an ego. Doesn't mean that they don't have, cockiness or, a little bit of strut, but they don't do things for ego's sake. There's always a reason that is, I would say, people say, oh, my dog did a behavior for no reason. No, there's always a reason. It's their perception. It's their feeling that they need to do that behavior in order to achieve a goal. It's not just based on because they can, ego because they're driving a certain car, so they're going to double park because they're driving an expensive car. Something like that. To me, that they just don't do things for. This is a tough conversation because some people would, uh, you know, maybe disagree, or it conjures up a lot of questions because people start looking at their dogs differently, right? It's what is the reason that they're doing that behavior? Um, and some people might think back to, oh, they had a traumatized upbringing. Well, with CBT, we look more in the moment. So, what is their feeling in the moment? We don't necessarily, well, we definitely don't, quote unquote, train in the moment. We do a lot of exercises proactively and practice the brain being able to, what I talked about earlier, self-regulate and make better decisions. But in the moment, what is the emotion that that dog is feeling that is causing that behavior? And that's what we work with. And why in the sense of, is it just a habit? Sometimes it's just a habit, like people. So I would think that the most surprising, I don't know, there's not really a surprising emotion because they're sentient beings. They have, they can be, I remember years and years, decades ago, a dog that I got from Texas was just about to die. Turned out phenomenal dog, so smart. Smart's a funny word too, right? Because like people, there's different kinds of smart with dogs. But I'll never forget. It was one thing that I really learned was a friend of mine was sitting on my couch, and he became my partner. I think he was my partner at the time. So she was used to him. She knew him. But she went up and she started to wag her tail and stand in front of him and kind of do a tap dance. And he said, "Oh, Chance, you want outside?" And she tap danced faster. So he got up to go let her out, and she got up and hopped on the couch and took his place on the couch. She just wanted his seat on the couch. So she was using these cognitive skills to figure out how to get him off the couch without being aggressive or rude, because that's just not the type of dog she was. So she used, a different way of being able to get him off the couch so she could get his place on the couch.
Wow.
And she's allowed on the couch. She's allowed to sit there. So it wasn't like she never did anything wrong. But I found that so interesting. I don't know if this is really answering your question, but I just found that early in my years, that type of, and then another dog that has a different personality might have achieved that goal a different way. So it's really taught me it's about how they feel they need to achieve their goal.
Yeah. Give me a second once. Sorry. Like you said, how they achieve their goal. I can share with you a small, not a small incident. This is almost like an everyday part with us. We have this girl, she's about 4 years, Mira, and she's very used to sleeping on, with us in the bed, and she needs the pillow, no matter what. So even if we have her head on the pillow, she won't ask or anything. She'll just come, push us out of that pillow, and she would take that entire pillow. So it's like, what you rightly said, they all have personalities. So for us, for the last 4 years, we have been seeing this girl do the same thing, whether it's with me or my wife. We put a couple of pillows so that she's comfortable. But the thing is, with her, she wants to be on the pillow we have our head on. So she'll come and knock us out and, boom, this is now, I want to be here. And so, this is what the personality that you're talking about. So it's such a good thing. And the other instance that you mentioned, they don't have ego. That is something I have learned in the last 4 years. Every time I get upset or angry with something, I keep reminding myself, the elder one that I have is called Karma. And, if sometimes you're angry with him, or you just even, because he can sense if you're angry at times, because he's done something nasty. He has this habit of doing things. But, it's not like we're angry, but we just try and tell him, because he has a very dirty habit of, soiling the entire toilet rolls. He'll take the entire bunch. And if you don't pay attention, in 5 minutes, the entire rolls are gone. So at times when we just, look at him, he knows we are upset. And he won't even wait for a couple of seconds. All he'll do is put his head down and come and snuggle up with you. And we humans have such a tendency that even if somebody tells us something, we will not be speaking to that person for weeks, months, and years. And every time I keep reminding myself, look at what Karma would do. And this is such a way of, looking at things differently. As I said, I am still evolving with him. With
That's
all
so
the three.
funny that you said, what would Karma do? Because I've done that with dogs so much. It's sort of become a joke between myself and some of my friends where, we're trying to figure out what would, and we'll pick a dog's name, any dog that, there's been hundreds, but, what would Piney do? Or what would these, and it's just so funny to think of it that way, because it's again, that's what CBT is, right? A way of bringing back your brain. So you're doing actually self CBT. You're looking at karma, looking what karma's doing and thinking, what is a better way for me to manage my surroundings or situation, calmly manage, self-regulating, right? So it's phenomenal how they can bring us back around. And you're right, some dogs are more, I don't know whether this is yet another question that's people have different thoughts on, but probably based on their personal experience. But some dogs will respond when people are crying, and they'll become sympathetic or empathetic, or do they have empathy versus sympathy? Whereas other dogs, they understand that you're maybe not in the mood for playing, and they'll kind of leave it, but they don't really understand that you're hurting emotionally. Or maybe they do, but they just have a different way of dealing with that, like people.
Yes.
Right? People can see someone crying and they might just, okay, I'm just going to leave them alone. And other people, a complete stranger might come up and people, they seem to tend to overanalyze. I don't know if they're overanalyzing dogs, but often if we just bring it back, like, what would a dog do in this situation? Well, when we're looking at dogs, are people much different?
No. What you rightly said, I can give you a very good example, because since we have three, and all the three have a very different personality, like what you rightly said, when at times we do cry, or if we are emotionally down, my middle one, Mira, she has this thing. She will come and lick you all over. She won't let you. She won't, we can feel it that she's sensing that we're hurting and, we're crying. But my other one, Karma, would not be bothered. He would sit. He won't come and trouble you. He'll sit and watch.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
So we've seen, as I said, we as humans are evolving with them over the period of last 4 years. Now,
yeah,
in your work, how do you recognize when a dog is operating from trauma versus when it's misread as bad behavior?
This is such a good question again. I love this, because there have been studies scientific studies that show during puppyhood, and they're using standard positive reinforcement training, conditioning, as I keep referencing. They're using tests that are grounded in positive reinforcement training, which is fine. And during puppyhood, these dogs are attached and bonded with their person, doing quote unquote right behavior. They're learning really well. They've learned the right behavior. They know right from wrong. And then they get into that adolescent stage, and they're continuing to use these same methods. And there's a decrease in bond. And the dog might go do something bratty or bad behavior. And they continue to use this positive reinforcement, and actually is ineffective or limiting, or in some cases counterproductive, because just like with children, it changes their perception of their adult. You know, you don't know how to relate to me. You don't know how I feel or how I think. And if you don't adapt, I'm not saying give in with everything, but adapt your method, grow with the child. Their brain development is occurring. Their cognitive skills are growing. They're also more likely, based on brain development, to be impulsive, to not think things through, right? So we need to guide and parent and change. And that's where studies have shown that if we switch over to CBT, there is a higher success rate. So we're not losing that bond. The behaviors aren't as challenging, and they're not bad dogs. So the first thing to do, we do have a process to learn. And I make sure that when I work with people, that we figure out whether conditioning is a better method for them or whether CBT is. And sometimes as we go through the program, we can kind of combine these a little bit once we get, so maybe what wasn't working earlier using conditioning starts to work after we work through with some cognitive behavioral therapy, and then we can bring back. So it's not black and white, but if the dog knows right from wrong, if they know the behavior is wrong that they're doing, but they're choosing to do it, then we would use CBT, because there's a reason they're choosing to do that behavior. And that's an emotion. And cognitively, they're figuring out how to do it. If we're bringing a dog like a Streety into our home and their cognitive level is high, they're over the age of 6 months, they've learned survival skills, they have patterns and thought patterns, then we would use CBT. That's not to say that you can't reward a behavior with a retreat that the dog does. We can. And of course we can give pats and praise and treats. But if there's a behavior such as maybe the dog is lunging at another dog on a leash walk, which is common in North American urban cities when they, or globally, but I don't want to speak for the whole entire world, but, you know, obviously, but what's happening in those situations is the dog feels the need to react to that other dog, to manage the surrounding and the situation. So there's a couple things that could be going on. That dog could be great in the home because that's a new environment for them. So they've learned what happens in the home. They've watched, they've learned. We've used some basic cognitive exercises and skills that create that bond, allow the dog to know, maybe even through positive reinforcement, what is, you know, good, quote unquote, good behavior. And they go, oh, okay, I can understand this. And then we also use cognitive behavioral therapy to, it sounds so formal, but it's actually a very simple, it's very, very simple bonding process. And what it does is it allows them to know that we know what's important to them. It's allow them, I think that brings comfort to even humans, anybody. If we feel somebody gets us, they get what's in our brain, they get why something's important to us, even if it might not be important to them. And that's how relationships work in general. It's we respect what's important to the other person, even if it might not be to us. And then there's ways of us showing that that is. And that's what this program, when we integrate these dogs, that's what it does in the first 4 to 10 days. It's brilliant. But let's say we go on a walk and suddenly they just start, lunging and barking at this other dog. It's challenging to give a treat when they don't bark, because in their mind they may still take the treat, but that's not correlative. They're like, yes, I understand you don't want me barking at that dog, but taking a treat doesn't really change that feeling that they need to do that behavior. Now, we're not necessarily going to insist that they like the dog or change their perception of the dog, but it's more changing their perception of our ability to calmly manage the situation as a whole, certainly the dog, but allowing them to process, allowing them to stop and process the situation and realize for themselves that they don't need to panic and do that behavior for the same thing to happen, which would be, depends on what they think. A lot of the time, it's to keep the dog at bay, right? So they feel they need to do that behavior to keep the dog at bay. So there's different ways of doing it. Conditioning would try to get the wanted behavior so that the dog can see that happening. So there's more training in the moment. They're using, say, an associative element like a treat so that they can associate, okay, good, a treat. I don't have to bark. I get a treat. I see that. And then over time, they realize I don't have to bark. CBT is totally the opposite. We do exercises that practice resetting the brain, focusing, breathing, thinking, processing on different situations. And then when we get to these more challenging situations, and that can happen very quickly, by the way, we can take these exercises and they practice doing that. So the processing isn't encouraged in the moment. It's taught and practiced would be a better word. It's practiced outside of that. So to get back to your question on how we can decide that, there's ways. Like I said, one is I might just ask the pet parent or guardian, do you feel the dog knows the behavior is wrong, but they're choosing to do it? If so, then it would be cognitive behavioral therapy over conditioning, because conditioning has probably already successfully taught them right from wrong. If it's something that's coming from an emotion, a learned behavior, a habit, they're going from 0 to 100 in 0.1 of a second because their brain just goes there. It just goes to that place because they feel they have to. That would be cognitive behavioral therapy.
Wonderful. That was really interesting. And it's such an insightful conversation on this one. Because for me, even I am trying to learn, as I said, even I'm learning on this.
Yeah. Well, you're probably doing a lot of it. I feel people naturally do conditioning. A dog does a right behavior. And that's great. We naturally praise or good stuff, buddy, or give a treat or something. But at some point, just like with humans, we need more and a different approach for different situations.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of it is natural and inherent. I mean, CBT is a lot of what we call mindfulness.
Perfect.
Those kinds of ways of bonding and understanding and learning about. So I think some of those are natural, respect, wanting to recognize, like we talked about, autonomy and agency. Those words and terms are more prevalent now and they're more accepted. And so it's just a matter that we have the method that aligns with that mindset. So when we have a method that aligns with a mindset, we see a lot of progress.
Absolutely. Now, what does intrinsic motivation look like in a dog? And why is that concept revolutionary for animal welfare?
I would say you see intrinsic motivation all the time with your streeties.
Right.
Their behavior is based on wanting to stay alive, wanting to stay safe. So intrinsic motivation is when we feel good inside. We're happy, we feel good, and we do a behavior because of that. So when we're talking about working on decreasing anxiety or fear, when any animal is able to self-regulate and process and not go into that state of panic, including humans, we tend to do it because it feels good, right? So that's what the foundation of CBT is to get that feeling, and then we tend to do it more and more and more. So when we find situations where we will do it, now with humans, ways that they might suggest doing that would be journaling or yoga or
Right.
3D. Now, that's not what we do with dogs, but where the brain goes is the same. We do other exercises, different exercises with dogs. And again, just like humans, it depends on the dog. We have to take some time to figure out what gets their brain there. And the exercises have a platform. We can figure those out in usually 2 to 4 days, and then we build off of those in the next 10 days and over the next 3 weeks or so. And we keep building on those. And that intrinsic motivation is what allows us to progress as human beings and to flourish and quote unquote succeed, because we feel, yes, this makes us feel good and I can do this. And we start to do it on our own. So we don't need to take our journal with us. If we go somewhere and we're uncomfortable, we don't need to necessarily drop into a yoga pose. We know how to get our brain to go there, and we can do it without. So that's the same with dogs. We don't, it's what those exercises are doing for us that we can then move forward as we address things that might be more challenging for us, or we find ourselves in uncomfortable situations that before might shoot our emotions into a state of panic. We can now say, oh, I have the skills, I can do this. Dogs can do that too. Again, as with anyone, it requires the ability to do that. So some dogs inherently do that on their own, just like people, some better than others. and some go through forms of therapy to do that. And that's what's so beautiful about CBT, is it's just so individual. And people see it in their dog. They see their dog get it. They'll literally get a hold of me and say, Billie, I just saw my dog work this through and make a better decision. I just saw it happen. I just sit back and wait. I just provide the guidance to the human, and exercises and things to do that are very simple and easy in their daily life. And then they see it and it's like, aha. So yes, dogs, I believe, and I think people that work with streeties believe that if we don't recognize their cognitive skills and allow them to work off of intrinsic motivation, it can be challenging to integrate them into domestic life or to bond with them. So I think you're just naturally and inherently doing some of these things. And other people can. And when I work with people, some are at that level. They're almost there. They're just, some of them don't even recognize that they're doing it. And it's just a matter of putting it into more of a formulated package so that not the dog's in the package, but the formula is, so that they can really recognize what they're doing, why they're doing it, see their dog, have a direction, have a guided path. And then it's like click, click, click. And yeah, you can see. I believe you probably see it in the dogs.
I do. What you rightly said, I was just, it got me as well thinking, because there are so many things, it's like we don't, I'll take it as my personal thing. I don't have a set formula or something, but now when I am, in conversation with you, I'm trying to, connect to the things that you're mentioning. And I am trying to see, yes, these are the things that happen, So it's really, I would say, it's for me, as you rightly said, we need to package it, formulate it properly for a lot of other people to do it so that they can find it comfortable in doing what needs to be done for these souls. Now, you often talk about autonomy and self-regulation in dogs. These are deep psychological terms. How do they practically change the way we live with dogs?
They see us differently. I think that's very important. Their perception of us and their perception that we get them. So the exercises that we do, the common with dog training is to fix a problem or to, and I get it because people are frustrated. I get it. And it's funny when I say to people, let's not focus on the behavior. Well, Billy, my dog just bit somebody. So we do kind of have to focus. We do. But we come about it differently. And in the process of that, this process allows them to see us differently. And I think that is one of the first things that happens is they see us as understanding them and as being able to calmly manage. We're not in charge as such, but it's like any relationship. If you feel comfortable that the person you're with understands what's going on and is contributing and is able to address and manage, and just like functioning in a house family life, right? If your partner is with the program and knows what's going on and is picking up milk on their way home from work, like they're with it brings you comfort, right? You can relax a little bit. So for a dog, for example, that's highly anxious coming in the home, and maybe they just don't say, for example, they don't urinate on a walk. People don't hire me because their dog doesn't urinate on a walk. But as we start to do the exercises, which are very simple, they're independent individual dogs, so I can't really get into them, but just like with people, with CBT, those basic exercises aren't difficult, but they're different for each person. But what they do is they allow that brain to reset and process and go into a state where they're not just, okay, I'm going to go in robot mode or I'm going to shut down. They're actually processing and they're viewing things and the person differently. And then all of a sudden they're on a walk and the dog pees. Did we tell the dog to pee? No. Did we give a treat after the dog peed? No. We might by human nature say, good girl or whatever. But the dog wasn't peeing because they thought it was the right behavior and what we wanted and they're going to get a reward. They're peeing because they feel more comfortable with us and on the walk and the relationship and our ability and just their whole brain is more comfortable, so they pee. I don't necessarily say to my clients, let me know if your dog pees. I kind of wait. I let them, and there's hundreds, literally hundreds of different things. People have said, oh, my dog would never do that before. And it's not right behavior. It's just indicative of an increased bond and this can happen in very short amount of time, hours to days.
Wow.
So I can't remember what your question was, but I think it had to do with
No, you basically answered everything perfectly, with it. No, perfect. Now, you've worked with dogs from war zones, meat markets, and dog fighting rings. How do these dogs teach us about healing and resilience?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. Some of sorry. Wow, that just got me. Yeah, my goodness. There's been so many. That goes way back, some of them way back. They're phenomenal. They are, to have them bond so quickly and to get it and trust and bond and just know. They're so intuitive. Yeah, I mean, obviously some take longer than others and but it's amazing the ones that have been incredibly traumatized that just come around. And the people that work with me, it's amazing that and the feeling they get when they do that. And others the dogs they just teach. They've taught me so much. They've taught me. They're why they're who they're. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm struggling on this one.
No,
They're the
please.
reason I am who I am. Yeah, those tough ones are. Yeah, and why I do what I do. Yeah.
Billie, I'm sorry I touched that. No, I'm so
No,
sorry.
that's okay. No, it's okay.
No, I remember in the earlier part of our conversation, you mentioned one part where you said the dogs are still loyal even if they have had a bad experience with their guardian or their pet parent. They are still loyal and they still love us unconditionally. And this, I think, we humans need to learn from them, because in today's times, we're losing humanity.
We are.
So
we are people. It's just logic and common sense and humanity and intuition is stifled.
Absolutely.
No. So I feel badly for the dogs that maintain loyalty to a horrible person, but we can take that trait and move it forward. And then when they express that loyalty to a good person, well, then they just explode. Then it's like, wow, now I even have, and when things are consistent for them and not consistent as a routine, nobody has a routine life and consistency in their life, but being able to understand what their world around them and have it make sense. It's the same with humans. We get very calm. And when our world around us makes sense and it's peaceful, even in chaos.
So true.
If you have a happy family life and it's chaotic and kids are here and there and they're going to sports and everything else and doing things, it is still a pleasant chaos. Absolutely. So dogs can come into that environment and they can figure it out. They can feel it. They know it. They can feel it. It doesn't have to be super routine, but the ones that have been, they can still, absolutely, they can still love, and they can, and even ones that have lived on the streets, they can enjoy domestication And it's not stifling them as long as we are recognizing their cognitive skills and who they are. Yeah.
Absolutely.